Welcome to National Parks Traveler, where we explore the national parks and the issues that involve them.
Climate change is materializing in various ways across the national park system. Houses have been falling into the Atlantic Ocean at Cape Hatteras National Seashore as a result of sea level rise and shifting of the barrier island itself. Wildfires have been raging through Sequoia, Yosemite, and Lassen Volcanic National Parks, just to name 3 units impacted by fire. And flooding has unexpectedly become a major force at Yellowstone National Park. This is Kurt Repenchek, your host at National Parks Traveler. It's been just about 2 months since catastrophic floods hit the northern portion of Yellowstone, and the recovery efforts are continuing, and will continue for quite a few years in the case of rebuilding the north and northeast entrance roads. We'll be back in a minute with Yellowstone Superintendent Cam Sholly to get the latest on the recovery work.
The Grand Teton National Park Foundation is a private, nonprofit organization that supports projects that protect and enhance Grand Teton National Park's cultural, historic, and natural resources. By funding initiatives that go beyond what the National Park Service could accomplish on its own, Foundation donors improve the visitor experience and provide benefits to the national park system for decades to come. See their successes at gtnpf.org. Full of stunning photography and thought-provoking reads, Smokey's Life is a biannual magazine produced by Great Smoky Mountains Association. Members receive it free of charge each spring and fall, and it is available for purchase in retail stores throughout Great Smoky Mountains National Park and online at smokeysinformation.org. Washington State is graced with 3 spectacular national parks, each different and special in their own unique ways. As the official nonprofit partner and the only philanthropic organization dedicated exclusively to supporting these parks through charitable contributions, Washington's National Park Fund has a mission to raise private support to deepen everyone's love for, understanding of, and experiences in Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. Share your passion for these parks at wnpf.org. The Everglades Foundation, the only organization whose sole mission is to restore and protect America's Everglades. Learn more at evergladesfoundation.org.
Okay, we're back now with Cam Sholly, Yellowstone Superintendent. Cam, how are you doing?
It's been a long 7 weeks, Kurt, but the team here is doing pretty well overall. They've done a great job, and I feel a lot better right now than I did 7 weeks ago.
Yeah, I bet. But, climate change has been part of the national vernacular for more than 3 decades now. There has been talk about how it could make Yellowstone warmer, reduce your snowpack, and even lead to more wildfires. But has flooding on the scale the park witnessed in June ever been part of those expectations?
Yellowstone hasn't flooded that much. So I think it's an example of, even if we think climate change impacts aren't going to happen in certain areas, they're very possible. And so it's more of a matter of when, not if. And it's important that we incorporate that into all of our thinking as we move forward into the second century. And I think that we've come a long way in regards to how we look at climate change. There's no question we have the data and the science to support that those changes are occurring. Those changes have been accelerated in many areas. They're higher impacting in many ways. How we respond, understand that data and science, and then how we take more substantive actions to understand what we need to do to adapt to those changes and to predict them and defend the system in a better way, I think is going to be our challenges moving forward.
And I guess it's really a moving target that you're dealing with, no?
Well, I think if you look at a lot of the infrastructure in the national park system, I mean, most of it in most areas, whether it's transportation, roads or structures or whatever the case is, put into place long before climate change was really in the forefront of any of our conversations over the past 100 years or more. And so I think the question is, how do we protect the resources that we have, the infrastructure that we have. How do we guard against future climate change events? And then how do we build for more resiliency into the future? And so we have opportunities to redesign roads or, rebuild infrastructure. Are we doing the best that we can to understand what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future, and adjusting those investments accordingly?
Yeah, it's an incredible challenge. Now, as we mentioned, it's been almost 2 months since the flooding event occurred. You've made pretty great progress in recovery efforts. I mean, bring us up to date on where things stand.
Well, I can't say enough about the team here, just like teams across the national park system. Some of the best performing groups of people I've ever seen in my life. And one of them is right here in Yellowstone. I think, considering what we were thinking that morning, we woke up on Monday, the 13th, and the damage that we observed and the task in front of us, we've come a long way in just over 7 weeks. I mean, we've got 93% of the park operational, about 94% of the backcountry open. We've got visitation levels that are around 30 to 40% less as far as traffic volume than in 2019. But the three entrances we do have open, east entrance, south, and west, are starting to creep back to normal entrance levels. But the park-wide volume is still down substantially. And we have two very incredible gateway communities still largely cut off from the park. We're working very hard to reconnect those two communities, Gardner and Cook City. We think we're going to have that accomplished by October 15th for temporary passability between those two corridors. And then we're working on what the long-term solution needs to be and needs to look like. And that gets back to the conversation on climate resiliency. If you looked at this as an opportunity, what do you want to see in regard to, we know there needs to be road connections between the communities and the northeast entrance and the north entrance here. What should those look like, and how do we make the right decisions now? In this point in time, we have some opportunity to rebuild and do it in a way that's a smart investment, that's the least environmentally impacting. In certain areas I've seen, we might even be able to get some environmental gains if we realign the roads in certain corridors. How do we build for some resiliency? So what are the areas maybe that weren't washed out that may be vulnerable to future flood events? And do we take advantage of reconstruction in these corridors to make sure that, we're checking those boxes, at the same time trying to do it as quickly as we can and as cost effectively as possible?
Yeah. Now, as far as the north entrance, I know you're upgrading the old Gardner Stage Road to be able to handle some traffic. I don't expect it will be the same as the north entrance road when it was fully functional, but you're making great progress there, no?
Yeah, I mean, that's a 1879 stagecoach road that we're really glad was there. So it was a single track or a single lane dirt road. 3 days after the flood was impassable still. The Park Service road crews here put around 20,000 tons of material on it within 2 weeks to get it to where we could have at least one-way traffic back and forth for essential services and employees. And keep in mind, we have well over 100 employees that live in Gardner. So trying to get those employees up into the park, and especially as we were trying to go operational again, that connection is super important. And then Federal Highways has been a great partner. We've got a great contractor on it. They've already two-laned about half of it. And, winter comes early here. So we've got, probably 6 weeks to 8 weeks of decent weather, of predictable decent weather to finish the job. Our expectation is that visitors will, there may be some length restrictions, but our visitors will largely be able to pass back and forth on that temporary route until we have a permanent solution in place.
Yeah, that's good to hear. What about the northeast entrance road? I guess that's a little bit more challenging because I don't think you have any stage roads that you can turn to.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that section, we had 5 sections that were affected. We have one section that's, if people are familiar with Trout Lake, which is kind of between Lamar, Soda Butte Creek, and Pebble Creek, We lost somewhere around 700 feet, both lanes gone, very steep slopes. River was rechanneled where the road used to be, not a very obvious, for the north entrance, we had an obvious temporary solution to start working on immediately. There in the northeast corridor, we've got 4 or 5 individual majorly damaged sections that need their own plans and design and things like that. Oftedal Construction, which is a large Montana-based construction company, was awarded the contract from Federal Highways here recently, and they're pretty confident that they can get those roads, the road bases, rebuilt relatively quickly in the same time frame as the old Gardner Road. Frankly, if we don't get the old Gardner Road done, then the northeast entrance doesn't matter quite as much, because there'd be nowhere to drive once they came into the park. But I'm confident both of those corridors will have temporary solutions in place going into the winter, and we will have traffic traveling back and forth. If something happens, like we get the snowstorm of the century in September or something like that, some of those timelines may be skewed, but I feel pretty good at this moment that we'll get it done. And then we're starting to work on what the different alternatives we want to evaluate and what the timeframes will be, and the cost for long-term reconstruction.
With that northeast entrance road, are you rebuilding in the same footprint, so to speak?
Yeah, the temporary solutions, basically, if we're going to do it in this kind of time frame, have to be done in the same general previous road alignment. I think where there's going to be opportunity is going to be when we look at the permanent reconstruction. How do we look at, if people are familiar with the confluence of Soda Butte Creek and Lamar River, there's a section of road that's literally feet from the river. For some reason, it survived this event. Doesn't mean it would survive future events. So would we want to take an obvious section of road that's vulnerable to future flood events and move it further away from the river? That's an example of some of the things we'll look at over the long term. I do want to say, on the original response, people need to keep in mind that we had over 10,000 visitors in the park when the floods hit. We had several thousand visitors trapped in Gardner when both sides were cut off. The Park Service road crews and rangers did an outstanding job of proactively closing many of these road corridors that slid before they slid. And if they hadn't done that, I'm very convinced we would have had a loss of life or major losses of life if those proactive measures hadn't been taken. We lost our wastewater line down to Gardner. Here we're 200,000 gallons of wastewater flowing into the Gardner River. The only good news about high cubic feet per second was it was diffusing that wastewater very quickly. But the wastewater crew, our maintenance crews, got on that wastewater fix very quickly, diverted it from the river within, I think, 36 hours or so. Power was out for close to 48 hours. We had multiple wastewater system failures throughout the park, evacuated the entire park in 36 hours, the North Loop and the South Loop, and did that without major injury or loss of life. That's a testament to how incredible this group is. And then for us to kind of then turn around and divide the park into, okay, where do we think we can go operational? What needs to be flood recovery? Then working with thousands of business owners and residents in these communities, Cody, West Yellowstone, others, to operationalize the Southern Loop initially and then the Northern Loop at the same time, planning on these temporary solutions and for the future longer term reconstruction. It's been a really busy 7 weeks, but people can be really proud of the efforts here, not only of the Park Service team, but our partners, and tremendous support from the states, the counties, the communities, the Department of Interior, the Secretary, the Director. Can't say enough about Department of Transportation and Federal Highways. We would not be as far along as we are without their support. So it's been a true team effort. And I think there's a few things we might have done differently, but generally speaking, given the complexity of everything we were dealing with, I think we've done pretty well in just a short amount of time.
Yeah, it really has been amazing. And watching from a distance, when you take into account the extent of flooding and how great it was, and Just amazing initial response, and then, as you said, the communities and all the stakeholders coming together. We're talking today with Yellowstone Superintendent Cam Sholly about Yellowstone's recovery from devastating floods in June. We'll be back in a minute.
The Yosemite Conservancy helps visitors connect with Yosemite through adventures, volunteering, and the arts. It's the only nonprofit dedicated to supporting Yosemite National Park and funds grants to improve trails, restore habitat, protect wildlife, and inspire the next generation of nature lovers. Learn more at yosemite.org. The Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation is the primary nonprofit fundraising partner for the Blue Ridge Parkway. It is made up of people who have a deep love for this majestic road and want to ensure that its natural beauty and the experiences it offers endure for generations to come. Show your appreciation at brpfoundation.org. We all aspire to leave a legacy of good, right? One way or the other, our parks and public lands are all of our legacies. Join Wild Tributes for the Parks community with apparel that pays tribute to where legacy roams. Together, we can and will make a difference for the parks. Join us at wildtribute.com. Whether it be strategy, business planning, change management, board development, executive search, or diversity planning, Potrero Group is here to help. They mix a depth of experience in the parks and land space with the breadth of best practices from other industries. For more information or to schedule a preliminary conversation, go to potrerogroup.com. Potrero group.com.
Cam, I'm wondering, the most visible damage, of course, has been to the north and the northeast entrance roads, that section of the park. Can you point to some other damage that the public might not be aware of? I mean, I heard mention that there was a patrol cabin washed downstream. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but what can you tell us about what folks haven't noticed in the media?
Well, one of the northern loop of Yellowstone was affected much more than the southern loop. And there was some frustration originally around, once we cleared mudslides and trees and things like that off the southern loop, why didn't we just go let full blown traffic come into the southern loop? We had two close calls with our wastewater systems, one at Old Faithful, one at Canyon. Those are kind of invisible to the public, but if they're not functioning, you can't host visitation. So it was critical that we kind of eased into letting visitors back in the park and made sure that our facilities could withstand something that's pretty critical, wastewater, and not overwhelm those systems too quickly and then get ourselves in a situation where we had to, reclose the park. We also had several sections of road that were not washed out like up north, but were substantially damaged. One in particular, south of Canyon, that Federal Highways helped us get a contractor on, and we fixed within days. And so we were able to open that south loop and have the other thing people don't think about is the fact that you've got hundreds of bridges that have just gone through a substantial flood event. Every one of those bridges had to be inspected to make sure they were safe for travel. That happened. Every single bridge in the park was inspected by Federal Highways engineers within days. But there's no question that the damage in the south was fairly quickly repairable, and we were able to reopen that within 8 days. We had mudslides up on Dunraven. We just finished that $30 million project. Most people know that Dunraven Pass was closed for 2020 and 2021. We just did the ribbon cutting in late May up there. Original evaluations of the damage were that we might have lost some of that road. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, but there were some mudslides and things that needed to be cleared. But then, if you just look at what we were able to do with the North Loop, and we got that opened just 10 days after the South Loop. And we've gone about as far as we can go right now, as far as opening without getting these temporary solutions in place for these two corridors. We did lose a backcountry cabin, the lower Blacktail cabin. That was kind of sitting on a gravel, almost not a gravel bar, but like a section very, very close to the river. Great example of where infrastructure with the right thought process around flooding and things like that, you probably wouldn't build again. And lots of washed out trails and footbridges and stock bridges in the backcountry. Once again, most of that up north, most of the south backcountry is largely unaffected by flood. And the reason why the damage was much more severe in the north is the hydrology of the rivers is much more violent. We had 2 to 3 inches of rain, warming temperatures. We had a lot of snow in May. In fact, I think we got more snow in May than we did in January, February, and March combined. And that rain and warming temperatures melted about 5 inches of snow. And the cubic feet per second of the Yellowstone River, I think, was just over 50,000. For reference, and they're obviously not totally comparable, but if you look at Yosemite floods in '97, the Merced River was around just over 10,000 CFS. The Yellowstone was over 50. I think Lamar was at 22,000 CFS. So we didn't see the type of, like I said, violent hydrology down south that we did up north. But when you have those kind of flows and corridors that have roads and infrastructure so close to them, we now see what the result of that is.
Yeah, for sure. Backcountry sections, you mentioned bridges being washed out in the patrol cabin. Was there an issue with a lot of down trees? I mean, do you have to send crews out there to clear the trails? I mean, you've got hundreds of miles of trails in the north.
Yeah, they've done a great job. We've got a variety of trail crews, rangers, kind of an all hands on deck. One of the first things we did, we had backcountry groups that were out in the backcountry when the flood event happened. So it was ensuring that they were safe, and if there's evacuations needed, making sure that happened. And then really focused on, after we kind of got the front country damage assessments looked at, really focused on what sections of trail, what bridges were still intact, what was the inventory of damage on literally hundreds of miles of trails in the north. And then started kind of prioritizing what are the things we can get crews in there and get cleared, what are the heaviest high use trails, what are the things that, stock outfitters and things like that we want to try to regain access to, where are areas that we're not going to be able to fix. And, we do have a small percentage of the backcountry that likely won't open for a year or two, but the majority is open now or will be open soon.
Now, getting back to the road situation, in both those cases, the north entrance road and northeast entrance road, they're going to take years to rebuild, right? I mean, can you outline the process? You've got to go through NEPA. You've got to find the right corridors to run them through. What are you looking at with that?
Well, if you take North Entrance Road, for most people that have been up here, that road went through the Gardner River Canyon. Substantial damage in that canyon to that road. I have no doubt that we could rebuild in that canyon and build a structure that could be resilient to a future flood event. I'm not a big fan of rebuilding to the canyon, though. I think restoring that canyon would be really good for a variety of reasons. I think investing in that canyon, I'm not being pre-decisional. We'll look at that as an alternative. There are some really steep cliffs and areas that are prone to rockfall and shifting soils. And I'm not so sure that you don't lose the structure from above. You might be able to withstand another flood, but at some point, I think that canyon's vulnerable to rock slides and other things that could damage the structure. So, what we've asked Federal Highways and our engineering teams to look at is what are the corridors that are potentially constructible, and what do those alignments look like, and then kind of have a criteria that we will follow. And obviously we'll conduct an EIS for the North Entrance Road, but what is the least environmentally impacting, what is the least visually impacting, where can we take advantage of infrastructure that was unaffected, that is not vulnerable to future climate change events, what is the shortest distance. All of these different factors we'll look at to try to come up with 2 or 3 main alternatives that we'll put forward in an EIS and a planning process. And I'm confident that we'll get through that sooner than maybe I've predicted. I've thrown out 3 to 5 years. I think there's only a couple obvious alignments that can be chosen. And I'll look to accelerate that and follow that criteria. And I also think getting out of the canyon, once again, restoring it, you could have some environmental gains in some areas. At very least, you would offset whatever corridor you decided to rebuild in. But we've got a couple good ideas of some areas that I think are going to be pretty light from an environmental impact standpoint, visually almost invisible, allow us to restore the canyon and do it quicker than we might have thought. That's for the north entrance. For the northeast entrance, I think a little bit different. There's not like a brand new full road. We don't want to build a 30-mile new road corridor in the northeast. So a lot of what you see in the northeast will be the same. There might be some armoring and some things that we do to the roadbed. There will be a couple areas that I mentioned earlier that are close to the river. We will look at maybe realigning and moving the road away. Those will be smaller segments. There's already a environmental assessment that's in progress for the northeast corridor, because we had a plan to redo the road between Tower Junction and northeast entrance already. It was an unfunded project, but a lot of work and planning and design have already gone into that. So we're taking that plan and seeing which road segments need to be modified. And I'm not sure that 3 to 5 years that's going to probably be, especially because you're talking about 30 miles, something that's done in increments over time, not necessarily all at once, like what we're going to be doing here with the north entrance.
We're talking today with Yellowstone Superintendent Cam Sholly about rebuilding Yellowstone National Park after June's devastating flooding. We'll be back in a minute.
Interior Federal Credit Union's rates have jumped again. Check out their new certificate rates at interiorfcu.org. Maximize your money for the future with terms from 6 to 60 months and a minimum opening deposit of just $500. Bump up certificates are also available to increase your rate one time during the certificate's term. Ready to start saving? Apply at interiorfcu.org. Since 1986, national park visitors have turned to the best-selling guidebook Passport to Your National Parks to collect fun ink stamps from each of their explorations. Just take your passport book to any national park visitor center or park store and get your free ink stamp with the date and location of your visit. Personalize your passport even more by adding stickers, logging your favorite hiking trails, and mapping your next adventure. You can also show off your love for our national parks with passport-themed apparel and accessories. Best of all, 100% of proceeds from the Passport program support your national parks. Stamp your passport as you capture stories, preserve memories, and discover America's natural and historical treasures. Acadia National Park is one of the 10 most popular national parks in the United States. It is also one of the smallest and most vulnerable. That is why Friends of Acadia exists. Friends of Acadia is an independent organization of passionate people, inspiring those who love this magnificent park to make a real and lasting difference for Acadia. You can make a difference at friendsofacadia.org.
Cam, you've worked for the Park Service in Washington as Associate Director for Visitor and Resource Protection. You've been Director of the Park Service's Midwest region, which has 61 parks. And you've been back at Yellowstone now since 2018 and seen forest fires, gas tankers flipping over on your roads, and countless other unexpected, costly situations. With climate change throwing more and more challenges to the parks, does the Park Service have the financial resources to respond? Or is it something that it's just going to be constantly going back to Congress and asking for supplemental appropriations? Or would it be helpful to have a larger Park Service budget that the agency could proactively try and strengthen infrastructure in light of climate change?
Well, that's a lot of questions there, Kurt. I think, everybody understands how supported the national parks are in America. There's a reason why it's the greatest national park system in the world. I think there's been a lot of progress in providing additional funding for the system, especially through Great American Outdoors Act. We've had plus ups in line item construction, cyclic maintenance, budget components, and those fund sources, whether it's a project funded out of Great American Outdoors Act or line item construction, have to be executed through the lens of climate change adaptation and everything we've just talked about. I mean, so I don't know that you want to have a separate fund per se, as much as making sure that you're incorporating the resiliency that we need for the future into the fund sources that we already have. I think that in regards to, these hurricanes that come through, we know there's going to be hurricanes. We don't know where they're going to hit. We don't know how impacting they're going to be. We know there are going to be fires. We don't know where they're going to hit. We don't know how impacting they're going to be. Floods are the same way. What I can tell you is that the numbers of members of Congress that have moved swiftly to learn what's happened here, and I know this is the case for things happening in other parks in the system, and look at the responses that we've had from Congress and administrations in the past on hurricane damage and things like that. I don't know that you can just build a fund for the rainy day events that are going to be coming, even though we know they're coming. So I do think it's more of a, let's try to make sure that we've got the right amount of funding to make the investments that we need to under normal circumstances, and that we're building properly or rebuilding properly to be resilient for the future. At the same time, let's continue to communicate with the administrations in Congress to ensure that we've got the right amount of funding for whatever emergencies come our way. And who knows where that is in Florida or Yellowstone or Yosemite or whatever the case is. But I just in this, and I've obviously been involved in a lot of incidents in this agency, from the secretary to the director, to members of Congress, to, the Federal Highways Administration. Everybody has been wanting to learn about what happened, asking what is needed, and working very closely with us to make sure that we get what we need to not only make these repairs, but hopefully strengthen our infrastructure for the future.
I believe the Senate Appropriations Committee has drafted a bill to provide funding, not just for the Park Service, but for other federal land agencies to deal with some of these things. And I believe it set aside $1.67 billion to help not just Yellowstone with recovering from the flooding, but to address droughts, landslides, the situation up at Denali National Park with the Park Road. But I believe out of that $1.6 billion or $1.7 billion, $1.2 billion is aimed at Yellowstone National Park. Is that, has your staff come up with preliminary estimates of what it might cost to rebuild the north and the northeast entrance roads?
Yeah, we've worked closely with the Washington office, the region in Denver, with the department. About 4 weeks ago, we had our comptroller out, our associate director for facilities out here, the director of Western Federal Lands for the Federal Highway Administration. We had congressional committee members out here. We've had many congressional members out here, and we have put together, I think, a range of estimates that will be completely satisfactory in getting the job done here. Moving forward. And so I'm not going to comment on the markup. I'm really happy it's moving as quickly as it is. I'll leave that to Washington and the department to kind of OMB to help kind of navigate that with the Hill. But a lot of people very interested in what's happened here. And like I said, have learned, and we've given them the best information that we can in a kind of an unclear situation. And I feel like that support's going to be coming for us.
Yeah. Now, according to the current timetable, you're hoping to have that Old Gardner Stage Road ready for more traffic than normal by mid-October. So the winter season, if people want to come to the northern part of the park, you anticipate things will be fairly back to normal?
I do. I mean, I think there's going to be some length restrictions on the Old Gardner Road. I think there's some really steep 8%, 10% grades that the contractors are working on leveling off as much as possible, but it's going to be a steeper road. There may have to be some alterations when we have heavy snowstorms as far as closing that road and getting it ready to go. There's some definitely narrow sections. We'll see how it comes out. But generally speaking, I feel pretty confident going into the winter that visitors will be able to come back and forth both through the north entrance and northeast entrance road mid-October into November, in that range.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And the wastewater lines from Mammoth down to Gardner have been repaired to the point where you can have the Mammoth Hotel functioning 100%?
No, those lines are severed in 4 or 5 places. We have about 7 wastewater systems that we manage in the park. Mammoth has always sent the wastewater down to the treatment facility in Gardner, and then we pay an amount every year for that. What we're doing right now is we've got a temporary fix in place, but we have a temporary plant that will come up to treat that wastewater that we think will be in place in the next 6 to 8 weeks. That'll be a short-term fix. When we decide on the long-term realignment down to Gardner, we'll most likely put that line back in place, and that's going to be the cheapest and probably the best way to go on that front.
So will the lodging facilities at Mammoth be 100%, 50%?
As long as we get the temporary wastewater system in place, we should be able to reopen the hotel here in Mammoth in this winter.
That's great to hear. I know people across the country are really interested and concerned about what happened to Yellowstone and how the recovery effort's going. Yellowstone Forever has started a resiliency fund, I believe. Is that the best way, if people want to contribute to the recovery plan, recovery operations, is that the best way to go?
Well, I don't solicit donations for the park. Obviously, Yellowstone Forever has been a great partner. They raised a record amount of money last year for the park, which went directly into many, many critical programs. And, I always encourage people to learn about Yellowstone Forever's mission and how it supports Yellowstone National Park. I think we're seeing a lot of the support, especially through their congressional members, in regard to, what they can do directly is continue to support Yellowstone and all the recovery efforts we have in front of us in any way possible.
Well, Cam, thanks for your time today and the update. It sounds like you've been working 24/7, and I don't know when you managed to get any sleep.
It's better now than it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, we'll check in down the road and hopefully see the winter season open as normal as possible.
Great. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And that's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to donate to the recovery effort, Yellowstone Forever, the park's nonprofit philanthropic partner, has created a resiliency fund to help where possible. You can find it at yellowstone.org. Next week, contributing editor Kim O'Connell is back from her summer vacation to Alaska and some of the national parks there, and will be here to discuss that great adventure. For The Traveler, this is Kurt Repenchek. See you in the parks.
The composers and musicians at Orange Tree Productions have created a unique collection known as the National Park Series that has grown to include more than 30 CD titles. Composed against the backdrop of a park's sounds of nature, these musical scores will connect you with these beautiful places and take you there, at least in your mind. This collection is the #1 selling national park audio series in the world and provides the background music for National Parks Travelers podcasts. Visit them at orangetreeproductions.com. Editing and production work for the National Parks Traveler podcast is done by Splitbeard Productions. You can learn more about us at splitbeardproductions.com. National Parks Traveler is a 501c3 nonprofit media organization that provides daily editorial coverage of national parks and protected areas. Traveler's coverage is made possible by reader and listener donations. Visit nationalparkstraveler.org.